Namaste. At the outset, I would like to thank Honorable Professor Gauri Mahulikarji not only for having invited me to deliver this talk, but also for being there as an inspiration to all of us, doing yeoman service to Sanskritam and the Vedic lore, I think near about a long 7 decades. And before beginning, I shall clarify that in the title, the role of grammar in textual interpretation, an example. By the role of grammar, I mean the grammar of Sanskritam. And by textual interpretation, I mean texts written in Sanskritam. And the example that I am going to present has been used multiple times on several occasions for different discussions. Now, if you ask me why do I bring such an old and repeated example, I bring it here with two things in mind. One, that I may get a different group of audience here. And second, this is a suitable example to show how an interpretation goes wrong as a result of little knowledge of the basic grammar and semantics. And this perhaps is an example that went into the hands of adversaries of, in quotes, anything that is Indian, that ultimately led to despise not only the text, but the very language in which the text is composed. I mean Sanskritam, the very medium of communication. So, to begin with, let us take two kinds of communications. One is spoken communication, and second, a written communication. Of course, there are other modes of communications, but for our discussion, we need to consider only these two types of communications. So, in a spoken communication, or rather say in a verbal communication, there is an interface between the speaker and the listener, which is nothing but the culture of these two people and their linguistic abilities. If you ask me what do you mean by culture? By culture I mean, please note it is my personal opinion, the amount of exposure to literature, art and other intellectually and emotionally inspiring activities and all else that refine the personae of an individual, such as what we inherit or imbibe from our family, friends and acquaintances, which in general terms we call culture, coupled with sound footing in the medium of communication, and that stand as an interface between the speaker and the listener. When it comes to written communication, let us consider that a text or a book as a sample of written communication between the author and the reader. And in this context, let us consider a few scenarios. One, we read a book. Here, we add our cultural connotations and interpretations to what the author has written. Now, another scenario is that someone reads a book for us. Here, the reader adds his or her cultural correction, sometimes by giving emphasis to an expression, sometimes by overlooking a passage or a phrase from what the author has written, and successfully manages to change the tone of the text. Then, when it reaches us, I mean the listener, we add our connotations to what the author has written and the reader has spoken. And another scenario is that someone studies a book thoroughly and then delivers a lecture on the book he or she studied. Here, the lecturer is to a considerable extent capable of bringing out latent ideas from the text and adding an altogether different connotation to the text and thereby influences the listener. So, when it comes to written communications, in the interface between the author and the reader, the culture and linguistic ability of the person who reads the text or deciphers or teaches the text also plays a vital role in the interpretation of the text, either as such or sometimes distorted. This may be a reason why Shankara Bhagavad Pada says Shabdajalam Maharanyam Chitta Brahmana Karanam. The web of words causes confusion. Maybe as a result, there are several literary masterpieces that are extolled, and there are also books that have been condemned, banned, and even burned in public. So I would like to dwell upon this line of thought and try to point out such a misinterpretation widely circulated on a text composed in Sanskritam, and the text is called Manusmriti. I hope everyone knows it, or at least heard about it. So before going into that, for two reasons. One, as I said, it is an old and repeated example, and two, because it involves a little grammatical discussion, let us start with another simple but famous, nay, rather notorious misreading, which is Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale or Marane, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrunya Karane. The story goes that Bhagavatpada addressed the verse to a dull-witted grammar student. Here, Dukrunya Karane is a root or dhatu in the root index or dhatu patha of Panini, the great grammarian sage. By the way, root or dhatu is the basic meaningful unit of a word, particularly a verb. Now, this root Dukrunya Karane is taken as an upalakshanam or an indicative mark, because upalakshanam means something taken as a sample to refer to a whole, and in this context to refer to the grammar as a whole. And thence the widely circulated meaning is that Dukrunya Karane means trying to learn the dhatu patha or root index, or simply say grammar, is of no help, while at the last lap of your life, so worship Govinda, who will be your final refuge. Now, after listening to this silly explanation, grammarians won't sit silent, because they have a few questions. If the student was a mudha, dull-witted, as the word is generally understood, there is no chance of prescribing grammar to such a student, for only bright students learn grammar. As today engineering and medical science are choice of the bright students, so in traditional Sanskritam academics, grammar is studied by the bright students, especially at the time of Bhagavatpada, and that is how it is even today in traditional institutions. Not only that, grammar is reckoned as the direct path to self-realization, idamadyam padasthanam. This is the first step, as endorsed by the great philosopher and grammarian Bhartrhari. Thus, idamadyam padasthanam siddhisopana parvanam iyam sa mokshamananam ajimha rajapadhatihi. Also, Shankara Bhagavatpada, as all of you know, takes the help of grammar to explain words and their specific contextual meaning in his bhashyas. He goes into the derivative history of words. Even Vedangas proclaim Mukham Vyakaranam Smritam. Now, Nahi Nahi Rakshati is not a negative emphasis, but an assertion, because two negatives make a positive. And the Anvaya or the prose order is Dukrunya Karane Nahi Rakshati Iti Nahi, which means it is not that Dukrunya Karane won't help. As we say in our day-to-day interactions, it is not that I am not going, which means definitely going. Then what? Then, since the student is not so bright, grammar is not the way for him. The easiest way is to do the Govinda Bhajanam. So with this explanation, the grammarians have been pacified. They are happy because grammar has got its due recognition. Now there is another viewpoint hidden in Govinda Bhajanam. Is it chanting the name of Govinda or something else? Consider this as a homework. I shall supply you some hints so that you will definitely figure it out. And I am sure you will be surprised. Hey, how long we missed this meaning. Whether you accept it or not is a different case, because if you are a staunch bhakta of Govinda, you may not accept my view. Yet, consider this for the sake of pure academics. There is a possibility. Govinda is a compound of Go and Vinda. Of course, there is further derivative history behind how Go and Vinda came into being, discussion on which may prolong our talk. So, let us begin with Go and Vinda. This is another name for Krishna. Why? Because he protected the Gavaha, cows from Vrindavan. He is also called Govinda because he found and rescued the earth, Go, when it sank into the cosmic ocean during his Varaha Avatara. Not only this, Go also refers to the Indriyas, the senses. So by Govindam Bhaja, Bhagavad Pada is referring to that which helps collect and keep under check the Indriyas, the senses. So another Shastram, not Vyakaranam, because the student is not so bright. The Bhaja in Bhaja Govindam is a verbal form derived from the root Bhaj, to mean seva, service, worship, and the like. But the same word is used in absolutely different meanings. For example, many places in the erotic literature in Sanskritam, such as Kutani Matam, Kamashastram, the word bhaja is used to denote coitus. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham, and apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak, Gita. In these two examples from the Gita, bhajati and bhajate stands for worship or dependence, ashraya in Sanskritam. Bhajanti vipadasturnam atikramanti sampadaha. This is from Bhattikavyam. By the way, Bhattikavyam is another Mahakavyam in Sanskritam. The context is the lamentation of Vibhishana at the death of his brother Ravana. Vibhishana was overcome by sorrow. Though he fought with Rama against his own brother Ravana and his kith and kin, the demons, for the sake of righteousness, the death of Ravana kindled in him brotherly affection. Here bhajanti is used to mean overtake, or strike, or take by surprise. And vipadaha means misfortunes. Turnam means fast. So vipadaha turnam bhajanti means misfortunes strike us by surprise. There is another beautiful example from the Naishadhiya Charitam of Sri Harsha. Panau phani bhajati kankana bhuyamaishe soyam manoharamani ramaniya muchaihi kotira bandhana dhanur gunayoga pattavyapara paragamamum bhaja bhuta bhartuhu. There are two different usages of the same verb. The first one is bhajati in the first line, panau phani bhajati, and the second bhaja in the last line, amum bhaja. The context is the Swayamvara of Indumati. The first line is a description of the king who is being introduced to Indumati. Panau phani kankana bhuyam bhajati means even the serpent becomes a bangle on the hands of this king. Bhajati becomes. The second is an advice to Indumati. Amum bhaja means put the garland on his neck and court him. Accept him as husband. Bhaja, to court, to accept. There are several such examples. I shall present one more that I remember, which is from Raghuvamsha of Kalidasa. Abhitaptamayopi mardavam bhajate kaiva katha sharirishu. When heated, even the metal becomes soft. What to talk about humans who are in distress? So in Govindam Bhaja, Govinda is a compound of Go, which means not the earth or cow, but the senses. And Vindati is not fetching the cows, but getting the senses. to the state of samadhi. Samyak asamantat adhiyate atra asyam avasthayam va samadhiyate iti samadhi means bringing the senses from being strayed on to sense objects, and bhaja here is used to follow or depend that shastram which help you attain what you are striving for. Is it not that Bhagavad Pada prompts the student to take the path of Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge? Here I shall give you a hint, whereupon you can build a complete picture, because of the reason that the discussion on Manusmriti may require some more time. Okay, so the composition is called Moha Mudgara of Shankaracharya. Moha Mudgara is a Sanskritam compound composed of two words, Moha, which means delusion, attachment or infatuation, and Mudgara means a hammer, and it translates to the destroyer of what is called illusion. And the word is originated from the verb muha. Now the word mudha in mudhamate is also derived from the same root called muha, which means vaichitya. Muha vaichitye is how it is listed, meaning vichittatayaha bhavaha, the state or situation in which the chitta or the mind is nana, means different, vishama, difficult, viruddha, contrary, then vihwala, perplexed, and so on. It is a deluded state of mind due to attachment and infatuation when we fail to discern right and wrong, then true and false, real and unreal, and so on. We call it moha. So Bhagavad Pada brings us the mudgara, the hammer which pounds or destroys the moha. If his intention was to address a mudhamati, dull-witted, to stop him from learning grammar, it also implies that if the person were intelligent, then he could have learned grammar, Dukrinyakarane, which would have given him moksha. So it is clear that Shankara Bhagavad Pada wanted to say something else. What is that? Because none of the remaining verses in the Moha Mudgara have any connection to this particular reference to grammar. See, Bhagavad Pada turned up at a time when Vedic rituals were practiced to the extent that they started breeding a lot of superstitions. His intention was to enlighten the people primarily by bringing out the Jnana Kanda and not Karma Kanda. So, Dukrinya Karane is the root from which Kriya, Karanam, Karoti and all such words, better say verbs, pertaining to the Karma Kanda are derived. So, here Dukrinya Karane is definitely an Upalakshanam, but not for grammar, but for the Karma Kanda. So, instead of understanding the purport of such Kriyas, which were essentially meant to bring in Chitta Shuddhi, it bred several groups who followed contemptuous practices, thereby deluding the mind, forgetful of the purpose, as they were engaged more and more in making the ingredients for rituals and caring about the rules to be practiced. Not only that, everyone is not capable of leading such practices. So clerics became sought after, who became addicted to benefits of leading such practices such as money, fame, name, and so on. Hence he says, Mudha jahihi dhanagama trishnam kuru sadbuddhim, and so forth. So let me sum up this part of our talk, that in the succeeding verses, Bhagavad Pada talks about transitory life comprising of wealth, love, beauty, and so on. Hence, he says that it is not that Dukrinya Karane, Kriya Paddhati, is not going to help you. You are in a deluded state of mind. Kriya should be done with the awareness that such a Kriya is done to achieve such and such a result, and you should achieve it. When we talk about Kriya, now you may remember the Dhanam in Kathopanishad and whatever happened subsequent to that, because Dhanam or Sarvasva Dakshina is a Kriya, an angam of the yaga. So since you are a mudhamati, you cannot discern that by kriya. Therefore, the best way is to adopt bhakti and do Govinda bhajanam, because your bhajanam, seva bhava, resorting to jnana yoga will help you regain focus your mind by bringing vinda, the senses gavaha, from straying away behind sense objects. Just follow this line of thought, and with the hints given here, you will find a connected stream of concepts beautifully arranged, rather versified by Bhagavad Pada. So I hope you have started getting some glimpses of how surface level interpretation, disregarding the context and semantics, can lead to misinterpretation. It's going too long, so let us keep it aside. So we began this talk by saying that the culture and the linguistic ability of the author or reader or teacher or listener play a vital role in understanding or misunderstanding a text. And there is all chance that we are waiting to shift from one paradigm to another the sooner we are exposed to another thought, another piece of literature. This is substantiated by some of the well-known writings that have influenced the world in different ways, both in the positive and negative. I hope you will agree with it. For example, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Quran are books that have inspired the world in their philosophy and have helped cement religious or philosophical or spiritual thinking, though the impact among these three books is colossally different. There is no doubt. Similarly, Das Kapital of Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto that he wrote along with Frederick Engels had tremendous political impact, resulting in the development of Marxism. Then Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King were greatly influenced by the idea of peaceful resistance propounded in the Civil Disobedience written by Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau of 19th century. The Kingdom of God is Within You by Leo Tolstoy. Then Unto This Last by John Ruskin, and the Song Celestial, English translation of Bhagavad Gita by Edwin Arnold, are books that have great impact in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Now these are examples for positive impact. On the contrary, there are also creative works that have negatively influenced a section of the society and lawmakers, resulting in their prohibition. Lady Chatterley's Lover, for example. I remember having read it from Chinmaya Shodha Sansthan Library many years ago, maybe in 2005, written by D.H. Lawrence, though helped bring in the sexual revolution of the 1960s, was banned at first. His own another book, The Man Who Died, which I read even before the first one from somewhere else, I don't remember, narrated the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He says that Christ was not dead, but in a state of coma. When he regained consciousness, he escaped the tomb, realizing the consequences of coming again in the vicinity of those who crucified him. The book was banned. Then all of you know the satanic verses of Salman Rushdie, which was declared blasphemous in the Muslim world, and the author went into exile after a fatwa, death warrant, was put on his head. So when it comes to India, there is a respectful tradition of expressing dissent or disagreement, but here too are sagas of sarcastic approach. Manusmriti is such a work which is admired by many, yet abhorred, condemned, and even set afire by others. Whereas the above mentioned texts as example for textual influence are mostly based on the ideological propaganda and may not necessarily have something to do with their grammar. In the case of Manusmriti, there is a vital role for the grammar of Sanskritam to play. Now the verse is Pita rakshati kaumare bharta rakshati yauvane rakshanti sthavire putraha nastri swatandriyamarhati. The commentators have cut apart the tail end of the verse Nastri swatandriyamarhati and imposed the invented meaning women do not deserve freedom, because there is a word called swatandriyam in the verse. Perhaps the commentators have assumed that the only meaning for the word swatandriyam is freedom or civil liberty. Now what has happened here? Number one, as I said, they have just treated a quartet or one pada of a verse as if it is an independent sentence. Number two, they have simply disregarded the context or adhikaranam. Number three, they haven't paid any attention to the preceding and succeeding references to women in the same Manusmriti. Number four, most probably they have been led by or influenced by the vernacular, I mean the colloquial meaning of the word Swatandriyam, which of course is freedom. Now the fact is that this verse of Manusmriti talks about women's safety and has nothing to do with their freedom. How do we find it out? Let us analyze the verse taking each quartet, I mean part by part. First pada, Pita rakshati kaumare, father takes care of the woman. This we have to repeat in childhood. Second pada, Bharta rakshati yauvane, husband takes care of the woman in youth. Third pada, Rakshanti sthavire putraha, and children take care of the woman in old age. Fourth pada, Nastri swatandriyam arhati, women shall not set out for self-defense. Here, Pita, father, Bharta, husband, and Putraha, children, are the persons meant to take care of the woman at different phases of her life, such as Kaumaraha, childhood, then Yauvanam, youth, and Sthavira Bhavaha, old age. Now, among her caretakers, Pita, father, and Bharta, husband, are used in singular, whereas Putraha, children, in plural. In Sanskritam, a reference to a class or group is made generally using the singular form of a noun if every member of that group shares similar characteristics and such a reference is equally applicable to all its members. The Sanskritam term used to refer to such a group is called jatihi, and a member of that group is called vyaktihi. For example, don't kill a cow. It means that no cow should be killed. And an apple is a healthy food means that apples are good to health. Similarly, the singular noun Pita and Bharta refers to every father and every husband, whereas the noun Putraha, children, is used directly in plural. Why? If Manu's intention was to refer to all the sons, he could have made it by using only the singular Putraha, just as in the case of Pita, father, and Bharta, husband, Rakshanti sthavire Putraha. What is the problem? No problem. Meter remains the same. So here Manu wanted to convey something else. What might be that? Putraha, children, in plural refers to both male and female. How is it that possible? Here the grammar rule of Panini, celebrated Sanskritam grammarian whose Ashtadhyayi is a rule-based grammar so well regarded. In fact, Sanskritam has 9 different grammar schools, but only the Ashtadhyayi of Panini is in practice. Most of the other schools are scarcely pursued. Now, the rule of Panini, what is that? Puman striya is applied. The rule says that in a compound, if a given word in its feminine and masculine gender in the same number and case is used, then the masculine word shall be retained and the feminine word elided, means deleted. So putraha is a compound meaning children, shall be understood as a compound of putraha cha, putriyaha cha, children, putraha, male children, putriyaha, female children. So both male and female. That means taking care of the mother is the equal duty of both son and daughter. So daughter cannot approach a court and say, you see, I am married, so let my brother take care of the mother. No. Some lady out there may question, hey, who are you to protect me? I know how to defend myself. But then that is an entirely different scenario. Here we are talking about our women, means women who are related to us, and it is not at all an order. Okay. So now the verb rakshati is in its present tense, and present tense is used not only to refer to an action taking place at the time it is mentioned about, but also to convey several other features of a verb, such as in the present context, the grammar rule, again, the rule of Panini, dhatu sambandhe pratyayaha is applied. This rule sanctions the random use of verbs in different tenses and modes when there is a syntactical relation between the senses of the verbs. Here we have two verbs. What are they? Rakshati and arhati. Do we find two verbs in a sentence? In one sentence? No. Generally we don't. Now you may say, hey, this is a verse, not a sentence. In fact, a verse is also a sentence. Verse means shlokaha or padyam. In a metric style, there is an algorithm to meet certain purpose. So here the verb rakshati repeated in the first 3 lines and arhati in the last line are contextually related. By virtue of this rule, the present tense rakshati, though used as such, assumes the imperative mood. So rakshati assumes the sense of rakshatu, but it is used as such. Thus every line can be read along with the last line to get a complete meaning, such as Pita rakshati kaumare, father may take care. You can also say father should, but let us be a little mild. Father may take care of the woman in childhood. Therefore, repeat. Nastri swadandriyam arhati. Bharta rakshati yauvane. Husband may take care of the woman in youth. Therefore, Nastri swadandriyam arhati. Rakshanti sthavire putraha. Children may take care of the woman in old age. Therefore, Nastri swadandriyam arhati. Women shall not set out for self-defense. The simple meaning is that a woman shall not have to set out to defend herself. Yet the doubt on the last part may still remain. Please recall the explanation we have given above to the words Pita, father, Bharta, husband, and Putra, children, who are the persons meant to take care of the woman at different phases of her life. Remember? Similarly, here the noun Stri refers to every woman. Swadandriyam means self-effort and importance, which is essential. If you set out for some important job, na arhati means does not deserve, shall not set out to. Hey, how does the word swadandriyam mean self-effort? This word is the actual problem maker. We must understand that one word is capable of expressing several meanings, and this is one of the salient features of Sanskritam. This feature might be seen in other languages too. Say for example, The word ether, somebody may also say ether. In chemistry, it refers to an organic chemical compound. In physics and in history of physics, it was used to refer to a hypothetical, invisible medium, such as a magnetic field. Others use it to refer to the sky or space. In the case of Sanskritam, but it invites, special emphasis. It is very important to understand this feature in order to grasp the rich and vast range of terminologies of philosophical and scientific literature. Now, it is true that the word Swatandriyam also means the extent of personal liberty and free will entertained in a society by a person, which is found reflected in Indian vernaculars. However, here the word must be analyzed in this way. Swa and Tandram are the two components of the word Swatandriyam. Swa means of or by one's own self, and Tandram means prime effort and importance. Amarakosha, a celebrated Sanskritam dictionary, elucidates several meanings of the word Tantram, such as Tantram Pradhane Siddhante Sutravaye Parichade. Pradhanam means prime, importance, effort. Siddhanta means a doctrine, a dogma, the final view. Sutravaya means a loom where cloth is woven. Parichadaha means the warp or an old piece of cloth. So here the word Swatantra stands for one's own importance and effort. In what? In self-defense. And Swatandriyam refers to the situation in which one strives to take care of one's own self. So as mentioned earlier, the criticism was done due to a lack of proper understanding of the semantic structure of Sanskritam, because the word Swatandriyam is derived from a root called Tatri, which is listed in the Dhatu Patha or root index in the meaning Gupta Paribhashane. There is another root or Dhatu called Matri, which is very adjacent, with the same meaning, Gupta Paribhashanam, from which the word mantra is derived. I have seen elsewhere the derivative history is mentioned as from the root or dhatu mana. This kind of half-cooked information makes problems. Gupta Paribhashanam means a private counsel regarding something sacred. I think you know the Mantra Diksha procedure. Now you see how colossally different meanings are derived. But behind this apparent difference, there is some inherent unity. This feature of the verb is called Dhatunam Anekarthatvam, multiple senseness of verbs. In fact, the Chinmaya Shodha Sansthan has published a book on this topic. The book is Dhatunam Anekarthatva Sadhanam. It is a general understanding that roots are used in numerous other meanings than confining to only the specific meaning in which they are catalogued in the root index. Oftentimes, prefixes or upasargas are used to help the root reveal several latent shades of meanings. For example, Bhu Sattayam is a root. Bhu is the root, Sattayam is the meaning. Bhavati is its derivative, which means Satta, to be, the state of being or existence. Prabhavati, becoming able. Parabhavati, getting defeated. Sambhavati, happening. Anubhavati, experiencing. Vibhavati, becoming versatile. Then what? Paribhavati, lamenting. And these are all its derivatives with different shades of meaning, though there is satta inherent in all. So if we consider the root index of Panini, those roots that require a prefix to distinguish among the different shades of meaning are enlisted in the most prominent meaning, such as Bhu Sattayam, and those with unambiguously distinguishable meaning difference, while in usage, even without a prefix, are laid down in the enumeration itself. I mean, in the root index itself, in multiple meanings, such as the root divu, listed in different meanings, such as krida, vijigisha, abhyavahara, moda, mada, dyuti, stuti, swapna, kanti, gatishu. All these meanings can be expressed without a prefix. For example, balo divyati, a child is playing. Krishno divyati, Krishna shines. Ramo divyati, Rama becomes victorious. You may also recall the different meanings of the verb bhaja we discussed in the beginning. So in the light of this explanation, I think it may not be difficult anymore to understand the contextual meaning of the word swatandriyam. In fact, there may not be another text in Sanskritam like the Manusmriti that yells at the ebb of its throat to fathers, brothers, husbands and brothers-in-law to adorn them, whom? Women, if they wish for the good of all. Pitrubhir bhratrubhishchaitaha, this is Manusmriti. Patibhir devarais tatha pujyaha bhushaitavyascha bahukalyanamipsubhihi. Manusmriti hails the society where its women are valued and warns where they are disregarded. Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha. Yatra itastu na pujyante sarvas tatra phala kriyaha. Puja here doesn't mean worship, as is done to devatas, but treating with honor. Manusmriti cautions every family the bitter aftermath of its daughters-in-law in distress, and pats on the family where they are at peace. Shochanti jamayo yatra vinasyatyashu tatkulam na shochanti tu yatraitaha vardhate tadhi sarvada. It advises everyone to take utmost care in protecting the women, lest it may bring sorrow to two families. What are these two families? Her own family and the in-laws family. Sukshmebhyopi prasangebhya striyo rakshya visheshataha dvayoh kulayoh shokamavaheyurarakshitaha. And it concludes by urging every man to go to any extent to take care of his wife, because when the woman is protected, the man not only protects her but also his children. His character of being a doting father and a husband, his family from unending anguish, his own self, because Vedas proclaim Jaya Putra Swaka Tanuhu, wife and children are your own self and your duty. Swam prasudim charitram cha kulam atmanamevacha swanja dharmam prayatnena jayam rakshan hi rakshati. The Manusmriti and the ancient Indians had nothing as precious as their progeny, I mean their children. And a girl is always a goddess in the abode. Today we are a sovereign nation with a constitution within the ambit of which there are civil and penal codes in place, and these codes are also revisited to make amendments to accommodate the requirements of the changing society. And so there is no necessity to look into ancient texts like Manusmriti for guidance. However, an academic pursuit is not futile for two reasons. Number one, that the text in itself has cultural and historic representation of our nation, as it has scores of subjects like virtues and vices, do's and don'ts, social etiquettes, socio-religious and psychological aspects of ancient Indian life. And second, it is a text written in Sanskritam, reading which is essential in the cultivation of many linguistic aspects, especially by students of grammar. I remember being prompted by my teachers to read different types of literature at such a young age, though I didn't understand these books properly. And we used to follow our teachers without a question. But later in life, I realized why they wanted us to do so. So, what I wanted to convey was, learning Sanskritam has a unique way akin to none. Understanding the intent of Sanskritam texts requires basics of grammar and etymology. The grammatical well-builtness of Sanskritam shall perhaps make it a little difficult to learn, but that is what has been keeping it alive without losing its sanctity and meaning so long. So, in the case of Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja has different shades of meaning. Govinda also has different meanings, though we were held up by the famous meaning. And Nahi Nahi, two negatives, had a positive story to say. Okay, and in the case of Na Stri Swadandriyam Arhati, the context is Stri Raksha and not liberty or freedom. And the meaning of Swadandriyam in this context is the situation in which one strives for one's own protection. Hope that the lamp of our age-old classic tradition of gaining thorough knowledge of grammar before going for other subjects will be kept alive, at the least somewhere by someone. With these words, I thank once again Professor Gauriji and her team for celebrating Sanskritam Day and making me also a part of the celebrations. Jayatu Sanskritam. Thank you.